the investigator didn't know what they were facing. Come on. When they tried to cover up the killing of Tyrone Mason. Lauren Freeman, the DA, didn't know what she was facing when they tried to cover up the killing of Tyrone Mason.
They say justice is blind, but here in America, justice is often in the eye of the beholder, and for some, justice is simply denied. In this series, we'll take a look at justice from different angles, here on Perspective Justice.
What's up, everybody? You tap back into the Perspective Justice Show with your hosts, Kojo and Yaya. What is going on, twin? What's going on?
I happened upon this story. I just happened to be looking at something else, and I happened upon this story about, North Carolina family that's disappointed that the prosecutor's office is not filing charges against two police officers. Well, the one officer,
the main officer,
who's mainly involved. So Tyrone Mason gets into a high-speed chase with the police. Once he crashes out, cop turns off his lights and tries to pretend like he wasn't chasing the kid. Oh, I just came upon this crash. And then you hear him talking to his supervisor, and his supervisor advises him, hey, don't say anything about the chase.
So apparently, now this happened 2024, early morning of October 7th, 2024. So this was a story I hadn't heard about. I mean, ironically, October 7th was also the date that the Israel Palestine, the attack with Hamas and Israel happened. So that date is kind of synonymous with, that whole not the full story, but the last thing between Israel and Palestine. But October 7th, this happened the early morning of that day. And apparently, so Tyrone Mason, he's 31. So from what I'm seeing here, it says that this is according to the main officer. The main officer is named Garrett, if I'm saying his last name right, Macario or Masario. He says, this is what he says. He says that Tyrone Mason was driving 70 in a 40. And he says that he decided to chase him, right? And then at some point he decided that it wasn't a quote unquote smart chase. So he says he slowed down, turned off his lights, and he said when he came around the corner that Tyrone had apparently crashed. All he saw was smoke. This is the imagery. So he says, Officer Macario says he come around the corner, and after stopping the pursuit, quote unquote, and he says all he saw was smoke. Like you said, so this is what he says. He says that he pulled up. This is what he saw. This is an image of the crash scene. And then at that point, he says that he called his supervisor. And you hear it. We're gonna play it too. He talks to supervisor Matthew Morrison, and Morrison tells him, I wouldn't say that I was chasing him. Just say that you rolled up and crashed. Right. So, this is kind of crazy because we're gonna go through the story, but I almost want to ask myself when you go through it, I'm like, well, why lie? I don't understand the lying. I don't get it yet.
I mean, typically, why do people lie? They lie for to avoid consequences. I mean, for fear of the consequences.
Story, though. What's the consequence? Like, it's
and that's the thing too. Like, could he? I know in several states they have gotten away from the high-speed chase because of the liabilities involved.
Right.
Police departments have been sued by civilians who have gotten hurt in these crashes. So a lot of departments are, especially like for minor things, if it's, if he's speeding, if that's the reason why, you shouldn't be chasing somebody because they're speeding. I mean,
right.
At a certain point, you just need to leave it alone. But I think maybe the potential consequences could have been, of course, a crash where someone could get hurt.
Right.
civilians, innocent bystanders getting hit or killed because of this chase. The potential of losing your job, and I guess depending on, further circumstances, the potential of prison time. So he probably didn't know what, especially once he saw that crash. He was right there when it happened. He's right behind the guy. You see the lights, you hear the sirens. As soon as he hits that brick post on the median, he turns his lights off. And
well, that's not what he's saying, though. That's not what he's saying.
That's not what he's saying. But that's the lie. But that's
how
the lie.
how he's right. And you know what? We'll do is also too. We're going to play the body cam footage because he's saying that he started to chase him. He realized it wasn't a smart chase, and then he fell back and just turned off his lights, and then he came around the corner and saw the crash. That's what he's saying, right?
Well, we know that's not true when you look at the body cam, and then when you hear, we look at the dash cam footage, and then when you hear their discussion, that's obviously a lie.
Really, C340, go ahead.
Yeah, RBD, fire EMS 1018.
Were you like pulling him over or something?
No.
You just driving by?
It's just a little area I work, so when I came up there, I saw the smoke and heard all the cars hitting the debris. I moved the tire out of the road and that's everything else is still intact.
Okay.
Yeah, what's up? Hey, so this car passed me at like 70 and 40. Stop them, took off, and I just went ahead and disengaged just because driving behaviors coming outbound. And when I came around the corner, I had already turned my shit off. He wrecked and I took him 50F rank.
Good night.
No, I had all my shit was off. Came around the corner here at Atlantic Avenue. He ran into the median here.
Okay. Yeah, you turned around on him. You lit him up. You immediately stopped as soon as you lost sight of him, and you drove up on him as RPDs.
Yeah. I had turned myself off. I continued to roll, and then as I was probably going 50 miles an hour, and I was like, "Holy crap! There's that same car." So, all right, well that works.
I wouldn't mention anything to them about you trying to stop him.
No, I won't.
That right there, right? So now looking at that footage, like you said, it looked like it was edited. So I don't know if we're seeing the full unedited, but it looked like
I think that there was probably some editing, going on.
It did look like, to your point, that the sirens were on most of the time. So it looks like he probably was chasing him all the way up to whenever they made that turn. He crashed, and then he's modifying the story a little bit. That's what it looks like to me.
Well, and that's the thing. The first lie he tells is, well, I don't know if that's the first lie, but the first lie that you hear on that video was when the other officer asked, "Hey, were you chasing him or something?" He's like, "Mm-mm." You were chasing him.
Right.
That's at least based on the video that we see. That's lie number one, right? Mm-hmm. This is just the area that I work, and when I came up around the corner, I happened to see blah blah blah. Come on, that's not what happened. So you're lying to another officer from jump.
Yeah, that's his supervisor.
The officer to me didn't sound convinced. He was like, okay. He sounded like he wanted to call bullshit, but
well, yeah, because that's his sergeant, Matthew Morrison. That's his sergeant.
Oh, he was physically on scene. For some reason, I thought because you never see him on camera. I thought they were like on radio. Or
no,
something.
from what I understand, that was his sergeant he was talking to, and that's
okay.
Sergeant Matthew Morrison, and that's when his scumbagness comes into play, because you hear him saying, I wouldn't mention this to them
Right.
for the other
Mm-hmm.
officers who come on the scene. So
Right.
when the other officers come on the scene, apparently he tells them kind of the same thing initially, and
Mm-hmm.
then at some point, Garrett Macario, then at some point he tells them the truth. At some point,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know when, but not initially. So that's what the
Mm-hmm.
DA was saying. She was saying that although it was despicable behavior, blah 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 blah, he did
Mm-hmm.
eventually tell the truth. But I didn't mean to cut you off. That was,
No,
from
no,
what I
no,
understand,
no. That's fine.
Sergeant wasn't there. That was the guy telling him not to say anything.
Cops are human beings. At the end of the day, they're human beings. They are
Sure.
human beings in a uniform. They are not supermen. They are not gods. They are human beings, and human beings are, prone to lying. And
Right.
it's sad and it's unfortunate, and they absolutely should be held to a higher standard. If
Of
you
course.
want to be treated at a higher standard, then your behavior must also match that higher standard to which you want to be treated. And
For
that
sure.
is not what was happening at all. Now, there seemed to be very little concern, at least in this short snippet that we have. It doesn't really show that much concern for the driver's welfare. I don't see
Right.
anybody rushing over there to see, is this guy okay? Let's get him help. It looks like he was real nonchalant about it from the moment he got out of his car.
Well, you know what? I was going to say that's the crux of his mom, Henrietta Mason, Tyrone's mom. That's the crux of why the family is suing. From what I understand, they're doing a civil rights lawsuit against the officer Macario. Now they have Ben Crump, Bakari Sellers as their attorney. They did a whole press conference a couple of days ago, and they're pissed at the DA for not pressing charges. They're really mad about that. And to your point, that's something that the mom talked about, is that she was like saying that, yeah, of course they didn't try to, if they had, I don't know what his injuries were, Tyrone Mason's injuries were, or whether he was alive or dead at the crash. I don't know if he died on impact or whatever. That was her point, is that no one tried to render aid or anything, and the fact that he lied about the officer lied about it, it just seems fishy, and in my opinion, it's almost unnecessary if the story happened the way he said it, right? According to the DA said that she opened up the investigation because she wanted to provide more answers to Henrietta Mason, his mom, because she had begun to run around for a long time. Because obviously now we're going on a year since this happened, almost, right?
Right, right.
So she said that the medical examiner, the county medical examiner, said that he likely died on impact, but I don't know if that's true or not true. You know what I'm saying? Like, the problem is, once people start lying to you,
Right.
officers, the whole
You don't
system,
believe anything they say.
yeah, you start being like, who's telling the truth? So, I think that that creates the problem there. And when you look at the fact that, so here's the thing to me. If he was chasing Tyrone, even if he was chasing him, going back to your original point, because I'm trying to look at this story and say, well, why would he lie? Even if he was chasing him up to that point,
Mm-hmm.
because you were talking about earlier about the cops' liability for high speed chases. There are a lot of stories like that. And to your point, there was a story, for instance, even in Dalton, Illinois, where, and it happens everywhere, but this is an example where Dalton being in so much trouble as they were in with all the having the mayor
The corruption and
and
all
all the
that, yeah.
debt. So one of the things that the town had is, they had, like many towns, they had lawsuits, and they had a lawsuit where, I guess in a high speed chase, I'm not sure if it was the person they were chasing or somebody that was just a bystander in the chase. The police rammed into somebody, and one of the guys became a paraplegic. So the town had to pay. They had to settle for, I think, $33 million to pay this person. I say all that to say that I still don't understand this case, because it was early morning. It doesn't appear that there was a lot of traffic on the highway looking at these pictures to me. You know what I'm saying? And I'm wondering why he lied. I don't get why he lied. I don't
Well,
understand.
for me, I think it's pretty clear. He lied because the story didn't happen the way it happened. You saw somebody. I think that he initially told the truth, or told parts of the truth to his supervisor. Right? I was guy doing 70 in a 40. You decided that you were going to pursue him, but and then he starts lying after that. Like, okay, so that part I figured.
Well, let me ask you, what do you think happened though? What
I think happened is exactly what he said. It's
Well, I
early
mean,
morning.
from the okay. So what I mean is that from him being liable, do you think him chasing him and Tyrone crashing would be something that they would have put on the officer? Did he, like I'm saying, did he not follow protocol to an extent, or?
I mean, that's true. That's true. Now, I think where the liability may come. Well, this is difficult. This is
It's a
difficult
weird
because
one.
it's a weird one. I'll say this. From what I think happened is exactly what he said. It's early morning. It's dark. You see somebody driving well over the speed limit.
Mm-hmm.
In the early morning hours.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a lot of traffic out there. Nothing to do but catch speeders and drunk drivers at that time of the day, right? So
Sure.
you see this guy driving fast. You figure, I'm going to pull him over. Put on your lights and sirens. He doesn't pull over. He speeds up.
Mm-hmm.
So then you make a decision. Okay, I'm going to pursue this guy, get him to pull over, right?
Right.
Now, instead of 70, he's doing 100 miles an hour. And maybe you're thinking, should I continue with this pursuit? But you don't stop. You don't stop the pursuit until the guy crashes. Now it's like, am I responsible for this crash? Should I have just let the speeder go? Did I do something that would that instigated this crash and happening? Do I have any liability in this? To me, that is the crux of why he lied. Period.
Right.
Is because he may not know fully himself what his liability is in somebody crashing. Now, I'm sure there's protocols and things in place where, okay, if you're going to do a pursuit, and I know in some jurisdictions, if you're going to do a pursuit over certain miles per hour, I think you need to get permission from a higher up, or you need to be calling in. Okay, speeds now at such and such. Speeds now at 100 miles an hour.
And they'll tell you to stand down, right?
Yes, I've heard, calls where they say, okay, stand down. Let's call off the chase. I've seen dash cam footage of chases like that where the person's driving reckless.
Yeah.
But but the speeds have gotten too high. They're in a populated area. They tell them, call off the chase. We'll get them later.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen videos like that. They got the person's license plate and all that stuff. They figure, well, we'll catch up with you later. We got you on video committing these traffic violations. We're not going to jeopardize anybody's safety, including the officers, by continuing this chase. So, and this is the North Carolina State Police. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what their protocol would be as to when what you need to do to continue a chase. Do you need to get approval to go at a certain speed? Mm-hmm. Do you need to if it's a certain type of violation, are you even allowed to pursue? What probable cause? Does it need to be a certain type of probable cause to continue a pursuit? I mean, we don't necessarily know all of these things, and maybe that officer himself might not know all of these things, which is why he lied, because clearly he didn't know. There's no reason to lie if you know that you're doing the right thing. And you know that you have no
exactly. That's the whole point, because it's
that's the point. Mm-hmm.
It's like, it doesn't look like the chase was that far. He and to me, it almost looks like he may have just created a situation by lying, and his lieutenant, or excuse me, and his sergeant for giving that advice, right? So his sergeant shouldn't have said anything like that for one. I mean, there's obviously the bigger issue is not the bigger issue, but one of the the looming issue is that you have police officers who are lying, and it's like if you can't trust them to do, and that's what the mom said. Let me play a little bit of the mom, because I want to play a little bit of the mom speaking about it.
I'm very upset, Miss Freeman. You told me to my face you was on my side. You told me you was on my side. But no, you on the side of the state troopers, the men that lied. And if they did this to my baby, I mean the other babies that they did this, that we are unaware of.
The troopers have been on administrative leave since January, and the district attorney's office dismissed about 180 cases that they were involved in due to their credibility.
The DA said that they dismissed 180 cases in relation to testimony with these troopers, which is
because
crazy.
they're not clearly not their credibility has been called into question, and that speaks volumes right there.
Yeah.
I would be willing to bet that this is not the first time that either of these two have been caught up in some lies.
Oh, of course.
And that their credibility was probably in question before.
But they lying about something. To me, they lying about something small, which is so crazy to me.
They probably lied about, it's not really small if you think about it. Somebody died.
I don't mean small in the sense of the result. Absolutely. But it doesn't appear so, and again, this is just based on what we see. It doesn't appear that his mom is saying that they killed him or they caused his death. Her anger is lack of transparency. And again, this is just based on what I see. Lack of transparency, lying, obviously, which falls under the same category, and not charging them with anything either. They have no consequences, right? So that seems to be the main issue. And then, the fact that he was speeding, no one's disputing that. And his blood alcohol level was apparently over the limit, so no one's disputing that. So maybe he was drinking. It doesn't mean he was, sloppy drunk. Maybe he was speeding because obviously, if you've been having some drinks, he might. Yeah, exactly. He may have been scared of a DUI. Who knows? But I say it's small because I'm like, okay, if Tyrone Mason was in the wrong as far as how he was moving that night on the street behind the wheel of a car, that's one thing. And if he decided to speed and crash, it doesn't mean that the officer caused it, because even if the police are chasing you, it's not, in my opinion, it's not the police officer's fault if you crash, if you speed up your car. It's a choice that you're making. So it's not like the case could be said, oh, he caused him to die. He decided to speed up. Now, in my opinion, the only liability you really have is if you killed a bystander, in my opinion, or someone else that was on the street and the police ended up making that person crash or whatever it is based on them, chasing this other person. But the perpetrator who's driving, I don't see the case to say, well, there's any wrongful death or anything by the officer. He's chasing you. At the end of the day, the thing to do is just slow down and get pulled over. That would be the choice. Right. But lying about it to me is where I say it's small, because based on this, it doesn't seem like the officer, at worst case scenario, they may have said, okay, you shouldn't have chased him so long, or you should have stopped the chase earlier. And even in that situation, that's not going to be criminal. It's going to be civil. And that'll be determined to see, whether there was some type of negligence there. But I just say it's small because all the facts to me doesn't seem like that the officer is necessarily doing something wrong per se, right? In the overall scenario.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Like,
you know what I'm saying? But it makes you say, yo, if you guys will lie about that, if you guys will lie about something, and that's why I'm saying it's small
details, right?
Yeah.
What else will you lie about?
It's not like the cop pulled him over, was beating him down, and where the officer was or shot at him. The officer obviously did something to create deadly force to the person. So I feel like if they would lie about this, where it seems like everything's stacking up with them not being in the wrong, for them to lie is strange to me.
It just seems unnecessary to lie. I mean, really, I feel like unless he broke some protocol or whatever it was that he was afraid of, why not just tell the truth? I was in pursuit of someone who was driving very fast, very recklessly, trying to get them to pull over. They chose to speed up, and they crashed, which is not really the officer's fault. It's not
right.
Like I would say that in a crash situation, it is the officer's fault if you decide to ram them. That that to me is reckless.
Yeah,
especially if you're trying to get somebody at a high rate of speed, and then you start doing these what they call pit maneuvers, and other things to try to get them to wreck out, and then they get killed or a bystander gets killed, then now you're responsible for that. That to me is unnecessary. Now
I think they may let that slide, though. Just to interject, they may let not the bystander, but as far as getting a suspect, if the suspect has already shot at people and is armed and dangerous, just trying to kill people, then it's like, okay, they got to use deadly force. You know what I'm saying? In that case,
right, in certain situations, I'm sure it's justified. Like if the person kidnapped somebody and that kidnapper's in the, but there's situations where they exercise bad judgment and somebody gets killed.
Sure.
And in that situation, yes, they are liable. So in this situation, okay, it is very tragic that Mr. Mason passed away. Very tragic. He would have been better off just getting the DUI. But 100%. Of course, if somebody's been drinking, they're obviously their judgment is impaired. So they're not thinking clearly. It's late at night / early morning. We don't know where you're coming from, whether you was out kicking it, partying, whatever. Clearly, it says your blood alcohol was over the legal limit, and now you're speeding, trying to get home. So that right there, speeding late at night on the highway that's bad judgment in the first place, because you're more likely to get pulled over. You're more likely to get the attention that you're trying not to get.
Right.
It's very tragic that he passed away. However, he made the choice to get behind the wheel, intoxicated. He made the choice to speed, and ultimately, I feel bad saying it because he passed away, but at the same time, it's like
no disrespect towards him. We're just talking about the fact of the
him or the family. But at the end of the day, he caused that crash.
Right.
It was his choice. He wasn't hit. He had the option to pull over at any time. It was he made some bad choices that night, and he got killed. Should the officers face some repercussions for lying? I think so. Are they criminal? I don't know that it rises to the level of criminal charges. To me, that would depend on what the laws are in that jurisdiction.
I could be wrong, but I don't think there's I think one of the issues to your point about the criminal case is that I don't think you're going to find a specific law that the officer broke. You know what I'm saying? From a criminal perspective. You know
and I think that's why the DA declined to press charges and made the statement that she made regarding the there's no evidence of criminal
Yeah, there's
liability
nothing
there.
criminal there. Yeah.
There's nothing there. However, from I would say from a disciplinary perspective, I would definitely think there needs to be some consequences there.
Well, that's what they're fighting for. That's what the
Mhm.
family wants.
Well, I think
they want them to be fired.
and I was just about to say, from a disciplinary perspective, I would think that termination of employment would be the appropriate punishment,
right?
In this case, I believe the newscaster said that they were suspended.
Yeah.
They had been. I don't know. They'd been suspended since January of this year.
Yeah, apparently January of 2025. Yeah, so they've been
suspended for almost 6 months, but they didn't say what they were suspended with or without pay.
If I had to bet, they probably were suspended with pay.
I would also.
So they have a nice little, basically a vacation.
So I would think that at this point, the appropriate thing to do would be for the police department, to put out a statement condemning their behavior. I don't know if they've done that at all.
I don't think they've done that yet.
The DA has, but excuse me, the police department. Yeah. I don't believe the police department has done that. I would think, especially if you want to build bridges and earn the public's trust, you need to condemn behavior like this, that is reprehensible by cops. I understand that you want to support your fellow officers. I get that. I'm not mad at that. But also, when they do something wrong, you need to be prepared to, admonish them publicly for that type of behavior. And then when it rises to the level that this is risen to, they need to be fired.
I'm gonna play a little bit of the press conference real quick because they got Ben. Once you get Ben Crump down there, it's going down.
Tried to cover up the killing of Tyrone Mason.
Come on.
The investigator didn't know what they were facing.
Come on.
When they tried to cover up the killing of Tyrone Mason. Lauren Freeman, the DA, didn't know what she was facing when they tried to cover up the killing of Tyrone Mason. The county and Raleigh community, they didn't know what they were facing when they tried to cover up the killing of Tyrone Mason. The state of North Carolina, they didn't know what they were facing when they tried to cover up the killing of Tyrone Mason. And anybody, Ms. Mason, I want you to stand a little closer. Y'all, let's get a little closer. We need them to know that she's not by herself.
That's right, man. That's right.
And they had no idea what they were facing when they tried to cover up the killing of her son, Tyrone Mason.
I think that, Ben Crump is doing his thing, and that's what happens when he's an activist / attorney, and that's the type of noise that you need. I think that this case, and again, maybe something else will come out. So when you hear the killing of him, you think that someone caused his murder. And again, this story is I've never seen a story like this. It's a little strange to me because I don't understand. Again, I sound like a broken record, but the facts of the story doesn't seem like the officer needed to lie. So the fact that they did lie there's already a big, huge mistrust issue between police and the Black community. That's been there, God knows how long, forever probably. See, and this doesn't help. So to me, I'm just like, why are you lying about something that, and again, to your point, even about the possible liability of causing a crash, even if you want to say that, it just doesn't rise to the occasion of something. Nothing rises to the occasion of lying. But again, I'm saying, just trying to understand someone's mental. Why are you lying? Why is your sergeant lying and telling you to lie? So
I think it's a habit. I think that's what they do.
It's got to be a habit, and it's just crazy work. So to me, it's like now you create a situation where it looks like you're covering up the killing of Tyrone Mason, and I'm like, okay, is it the killing of him or the death of Tyrone Mason? And when you look at that and you hear that from Ben Crump, it stokes up more of that distrust between the police and the black community because you know there's a difference between the police beating someone to death, wrongfully shooting someone. There's something actionable that the police did to cause the death. And that's what I'm saying in this case. It doesn't seem like the policeman did something actionable per se. But again, what the hell are you lying for? So,
Right.
so,
I think, like I said, I think that's just what they do. I think that's their habit. That's their
yeah,
way of policing. Is that they're both shady,
yeah,
and you know, if you gonna lie about this, you'll lie about anything.
exactly. And
You
that's exactly the
and
point.
you'll lie about anything that you think is gonna make you look bad or make you look
Right.
like you were in the wrong.
I think at this point they definitely should be fired, and I think
Absolutely.
that's the biggest thing. So it looks like they're doing a civil rights lawsuit against Garrett Macario, the actual officer. And I'm wondering if it's going to be. So I don't know if the civil rights lawsuit. I don't know if it's. I don't know because he's not. It's different if you're charged federally for civil rights, and obviously if he was charged, then you could be doing Fed time. But the civil rights lawsuit, I'm going to have to assume is just something obviously civil, some type of settlement, But
Yeah, I don't think there hasn't been any criminal charges brought in any
no,
jurisdiction.
I don't
So,
think there will be.
and this
I
is
don't think
all
there
going to
will
be
be.
civil, and it's all going to come down to some sort of financial compensation at the end of the day,
Yeah,
because that's all they can get at
that's
this
all
point.
they can get. But at this point, I think that they should definitely be fired. And yeah,
Absolutely.
to be lying about something small. It really this really blows my mind. So I guess we'll see what happens with this. But
That's my
it's a
perspective on the
strange
justice.
situation.
It's a very strange situation, and it's
This is really a head scratcher for me. I just don't get it. I feel like something is missing in the story. Like I appreciate Ben Crump and Bakari Sellers and the I appreciate all of what they're doing because they should be bringing light to it. Um, but again, I'm like, the killing of him. Like, I'm trying to understand. And again, people can go and listen to the whole press conference. You know, I want to understand. His mom has said what she thought. I want to understand the people who are at the press conference. What do they believe happened? Because when you say the killing of him, are you saying that the officers killed him and covered it up? And then I want to
well. I mean,
understand.
if you go by the dash cam footage, it doesn't look like he was ever in physical contact with him at any
No,
time.
no,
You
he
can
didn't.
see from the camera shows him crashing.
Yeah,
So I don't I think that using the word killing is um are just inflammatory statements
right, right.
and um a bit yeah, a bit misleading.
That's kind of what
It
I'm
can be
getting at. Like I'm
misleading.
not mad. I'm not mad at the press conference, but I feel like
No, but I think that
Ben Crump is doing what he's supposed to do.
yeah,
That's what he's
well,
doing.
he's doing what he's supposed to do. However, you also need to be responsible with your words. And you don't want to unnecessarily incite, um, a potential riot or unrest
Right,
based
right.
on a false narrative.
Yes,
And
yes,
I think that
absolutely.
we, as African Americans, we definitely need to be cognizant of that. Injustice
Especially
is,
in this climate.
and especially in this climate, injustice is very infuriating to say the least.
Yeah.
And I know that when things happen where somebody gets killed, like a George Floyd, he was clearly killed on tape. In other situations where people were physically killed by the police, where you see
Right.
it on tape, those things are infuriating, and you do want justice. And in those cases, yes, you should use the words killing, cover
Right.
up, lying, all that stuff.
Right.
But we also need to be careful that where in cases that we bear some responsibility in what happened, that we are also making light of the accountability that we have. Because
course.
my fear is that we are setting a stage of where we feel like we should be able to do anything, and interaction with the police is now injustice. It's racial, or it's
Yeah.
something other than it needs to be. If
Correct.
you
Yeah.
are, we do need to be very clear that, first of all, you shouldn't be drinking and driving. Period. You
Right.
should not be drinking and driving. You should not be behind the wheel. You should not be, driving at an excessive rate of speed
Right.
late at night, whether you are drunk or whether you're sober, because you do run the risk of getting into a crash.
Right.
I mean, it is what
Well,
it is. Now,
go ahead.
people, I feel like people are afraid to call out the responsibility that Mr. Mason had in this situation because of the choices that he made. We can't say that, because, he was being chased by the police, that he bears no responsibility. I think that would be very irresponsible.
No, you're right. Absolutely right. You're just really nailing it as far as my thought pattern too. That's what I'm thinking, is that, when you say, because we got to be careful to say he was killed. So when you and I'm sorry, even when I said with Ben Crump, he's doing what he does. I wouldn't say what he's supposed to do, but he's doing what he does. I
He
meant to
does,
say.
right.
So you're
Now I feel
absolutely
you.
right.
I hear you.
You know what I'm saying? So you're absolutely right. So what happens, to your point, and this is the same fear that I have when it comes to interaction with the police. Now what happens is that we'll end up putting all these things in the same basket, and now we'll look at him like George Floyd or Tyree Nichols, or we'll look at him as Tamir Rice, or we'll look at him as Eric Gardner, whatever. All these situations are different. This situation, to me, I don't think the police killed him. I think the police just lied. So what happens is that if you don't focus on, and again, to his mom's credit, she's saying what her issue was. She wants something to happen. Now, maybe she wanted them charged criminally. I don't think it rises to that occasion either. I kind of agree with the DA. I don't know what she's going to charge. I don't know what she would charge them with criminally, but like you said, this from a disciplinary standpoint, the police chief or head of police, chief of police should fire them. That's what should happen. And I want to say, I could be wrong, but I believe the mayor has the authority to dismiss, maybe just dismiss the chief of police. But needless to say, it doesn't even matter. At the end of the day, the policemen should be fired, and that's just something disciplinary wise. But yes, when you start having Ben Crump around you, what happens is that he's going to say whatever's inflammatory, to your point, and he's going to say, well, the police killed him. So that's why I think this case is can be framed in a way where, like you said, there's so much injustice that happens with us, with black people in this country, with police. And then, like you said, just the mere interaction with police, we dismiss all the context. In this case, I don't know if we're going to, I guess we could talk about drunk driving and the things that he did wrong. But I think that, to me, it's self-explanatory in the story. You know what I'm saying? So there was almost no need for someone to say he was killed by the police. We can literally see on camera he wasn't killed by the police.
Right.
But
Because
the argument could be negligence for not trying to aid him. That definitely is there. Well, maybe let me not dismiss that.
That is a very important point. You failure to render aid. That is, as far as as I know, that is a part of your job. Is
Yes.
when, even when you're, chasing a suspect and you shoot him, you are to render aid to that
Sure.
suspect. Now, in a situation like this, you're chasing this guy. He's being reckless. He crashes out. Okay, that's not your fault that he crashed. You didn't cause him to crash. He lost control. Right? He was impaired. So he's responsible for that crash. But you were responsible for rendering aid. You were right there. You saw the whole thing happen.
Yeah.
I don't hear, and again, I don't know if how much they edited or not, but you don't hear him calling for an ambulance.
Yeah.
You don't hear him calling for backup. You don't hear any of those things happen. I mean, and it could have happened right away.
He
right?
may have. I don't know.
That was obviously an edited version, but maybe it doesn't seem as though he was over there trying to help, because in any dash cam video or body cam video that you saw, he wasn't over at the crash scene.
No, he's spending time talking to his damage control. I mean, honestly, and again, I don't know if it's the truth, but the medical examiner said he died on impact. But likely, if you're driving 100 miles per hour, you hit a concrete median, you're probably going to die on impact, more than likely. So, and also and I'm not defending the officer, but also with this kind of crash, and you're hitting the median at that speed, an officer isn't an EMT, so officer isn't going to necessarily. I don't know if officers can go in and render aid as far as pulling someone out of that type of wreckage. I don't know if that's what that person can do.
I mean, but more than likely, if you go over to a scene like that right away, you would probably be able to tell if the person is beyond help.
Yeah, I think that so according to the story, that he had told the officers who pulled up on the scene that it was fatal, but he didn't initially say, like I said, like we know, he didn't initially say that he was chasing them. He just said he just pulled up on the accident and it looked fatal. So, but again, I think putting it in its proper context is important, not to defend the officer. I think what the lying part of it was stupid, just in general. You know what I'm saying? Whether he could have saved his life, I don't know. I think that part, if we're gonna go there, there just needs to be more.
There needs to be more context.
There's got to be more context to the story before we go that far to be like, well, he killed him. He
just let him die. I mean,
or he just let him die. Yeah.
I think, like you said, I mean, there is a extremely high probability that you hit a concrete wall at 100 miles an hour. You're not going to survive that.
You're not going to survive that.
Even if you do initially, you probably only have minutes, if anything. So I don't know that there would have been anything that the officer would have been able to do to save his life, even if he called 911, or called dispatch immediately. Would they have gotten in there in time to save him? I mean, that's some pretty bad wreckage. It would look like it would have taken time to even extract him from the wreckage anyway. Yeah. So if we look at it all in context and look at the entire situation, could he have been saved? If you have to weigh it out, I would say probably not. I think the likelihood of him
probably not
being able to survive that, even if he had instantaneous help, which we don't know if he did, I really don't think that he would have made it out of that alive.
No, that car is completely mangled up. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know how anybody would have been able to survive that.
No,
it's at 60 miles an hour would have likely been fatal, let alone at any speed higher than that. It's just
100%. I mean, I'm just playing a video game. Yeah, it's highly unlikely, but it's just when you look at that. But again, it all goes back to the lion, and I think that this is a scenario that again will probably go into something civil, and it's probably one of the most unnecessary things I've seen in a while. Unless something comes out and there's more information that would make sense to say, okay, maybe he should have been charged criminally. Because at the end of the day, once you start having this type of Ben Crump is not there just because he's there because the officers lied, but he's there almost, again, the narrative is that the officers caused his death, right? So then is he there because he wants them fired? Yeah, I sure he is there for that too. But I think at the end of the day, it's really more about trying to put more of the responsibility on the officers as far as the culpability for his death. And I think at the end of the day, um, it doesn't rise to the case. In my opinion, it doesn't rise to the case of something criminal. But hopefully they get fired, because ultimately, when it comes to protocol and being an officer and lying about something simple, again, it just shows that these guys, and the DA said it too. She said that these guys should not be officers.
Their credibility is garbage now.
Yeah.
It was probably in the dumpster before. And I mean, from an integrity and an ethics perspective, they let everyone down. They did not fulfill their job duties. From a perspective of being ethical and having integrity. So yes, they should lose their jobs. I think my perspective on justice is that's what justice would look like in this case.
Yeah.
Would be them losing their jobs.
We'll see. Y'all let us know what y'all think. What do you think should happen to Garrett Macario and Sergeant Matthew Morrison? What do you think should happen for them lying? Should they be fired? Do you think there's something criminal there? Do you think nothing should happen? Let us know what you guys think in the comments. Again, this is the Perspective Justice Podcast. Let us know what it is. It's Kojo and Yaya. We're going to holler on the next one. Peace.